All right, everybody, so we're going to take a look at the muscles of the upper back. Kaylee just pointed out to me that on the homework I had included one muscle group that we're not actually going to look at just yet, the Erector Spinae, which runs all the way up the back from the pelvis area and goes roughly, let me get a different layer so I can indicate. It roughly starts down here and runs up the back almost halfway or a little bit more than halfway, creating two little tube or hot dog shapes. That one we're not covering yet, so don't worry about that. Okay, these are the three that we're covering, and I can go ahead and turn these off so that we can see the basic skeletal structure that I'm using underneath. And so this is basically what you're going to need to be drawing. You can't see clavicle because we're looking at it from the back, but the scapula are on there. Do your best with the placement of the scapula. Maybe look at some references for how far away from the center line the scapula begin and when they rotate, how they move. Because they are kind of floating, there's not really a lot of good anchor points to secure them to the rest of the structure. But do your best with their placement and size. I tend to make them a little bit too small. Okay. So there's the basic structure, and so the first one we're going to look at is the simple one, which is the rhomboid. Looks like I actually drew this before I moved my scapula, so I'm going to scoot that over right now. Rhomboid attaches to the inner walls of the scapula, both left and right. So let me move them over there. There we go. And to the center spine, and it's responsible for helping us to pinch the scapula together. So when you're reaching straight backward with your elbows, for instance, that would be when this one activates. There we go. So I'd move those scapula a little bit, so now it's repaired a little bit better. Okay. Rhomboid is kind of a play on rhombus, if you guys are familiar with basic kind of geometric shapes. A rhombus is this shape right here, which has all parallel sides, but tilted, so not at right angles like this, which would be a rectangle, but instead shifted over like this, so that's a rhombus. The way I often remember it, because it was first introduced in like math, is just that this would be like a bus driving really fast. You put a couple wheels on there. So the shapes created here are anchored into the center, but they angle up pretty significantly. Over on the right hand side here is just a plain flat view of the back. This marker right here is the 7th cervical vertebra. That's the one that you can feel when you reach up to the base of your neck in the back. Then these 2 points are the ending points of the scapula and of the clavicles, which help to create the socket for the arm bones. I think that's humerus. Yeah, humerus, for the humerus. Then in the center, there's no real concrete, indication of where this ends. Just know that it goes up from the bottom of the scapula to create that rhombus shape. Okay? And probably we could count vertebrae or something like that, but we're not going to do anything like that. All right? So this is one of the deeper muscles. You're not likely to see this on the surface itself, but it does push all the other muscles on top of it outward, and so we definitely see that effect. Okay? Any questions about that one? Good so far? Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. All right, trapezius. So trapezius is this fun pink one, which kind of looks like a dagger. So I was taught to think of it like this up in the top, which makes it a lot easier to remember that you've got the straighter part that is the back of the neck. Then you've got this flaring bit which goes left and right, which creates the primary silhouette of the shoulders, I would say, and goes all the way down to where the humerus attaches at the end of the scapula. Okay? These flat bits hug the top of the scapula. It is attached along that line just to about here, and then it's no longer attached to the scapula below that point, but we have this sort of flaring dagger-like shape that goes all the way down to attach about where the ribs end in the back. So almost, I don't know how far that is, down the center of the body. A little farther than halfway, we'll say. Okay? So all the way down to about where the ribs end in the back of the torso. There is this diamond shape in the middle. That diamond shape is filled with, I think it's called fascia, or the sort of connective tissue of muscles that isn't, strictly speaking, flexing muscle. It means that the muscle group is completely filled in, but that area tends to be a little flatter. Okay, so you have bulging on the left and the right. You have bulging going up the two sides. You don't really have bulging in the center there, and it's centered on the 7th cervical vertebrae. Okay, so the effect is that we end up with sort of two ropes at the top for the back of the neck, which you can sometimes see the pit of and feel with your own fingers. We get two sort of curtains, if you look in front of them on the left and right for the trapezius, and then we get one large bulging leaf-like mass going down the center of the back. This is over top the rhombus, and so you get a sort of bulging wherever they cross over. So these areas here are more likely to be raised up even more so than these areas down here. Okay? Any questions about that? Make sense so far? Yes? Cool. Ooh, got some static there. Alright, then let's look at the Latissimus dorsi. Okay, so Latissimus is this big bluish purple one. Okay, and it is a very large muscle that stretches from the sort of triangle in the small of your back and kind of loops up all the way to connect to the humerus right near the top connection point, but a little bit further down. This is one of the two muscles that defines the armpit. If we were able to see from the front, then the pec muscles also define the armpit and do a similar sort of thing, kind of like this. So you'll oftentimes see a sort of indentation between the two with a muscle in the front and a muscle in the back, and that's what creates that armpit shape. Okay, so this is the rear muscle that helps to define that armpit shape. It does reverse its orientation at the very top. So this wall travels and attaches on this side. This wall travels and attaches on that side. Okay, and that's to help facilitate twisting of the arm a little bit. In fact, the pecs do the same thing. They also reverse their orientation when they connect. This is not necessarily a super important note for you as artists, except to note that this crease shape will continue this way rather than that way most of the time. Okay, so that's the important bit. Just know that it goes more vertical and it's attaching further down the humerus. It barely overlaps the, whoa, didn't want that. It barely overlaps the scapula a little bit. I guess I didn't quite draw it right over on this side, but just the lower corner of the scapula, it overlaps just a little bit, which will create a slight bulge. And then it also overlaps the trapezius significantly, but not really the rhombus very much, just a tiny, tiny bit on the rhombus. Okay, so wherever we have more overlap, we're going to have more bulging happening, right? Because these are very large shapes. The only ones that we are not considering are the Erector Spinae, which run left and right up the spine and create sort of a double bulge going all the way up, and that's going to throw off our perception of which muscles are which for just a little bit until we cover that next time, and then we'll have the full picture. Okay. Just as a note, this is not all of the muscles of the back. We're skipping quite a few, but these are the most significant for appearance. Okay, so for instance, there's an entire muscle group that is nestled inside of the scapula that attaches over to the humerus, and it's just a whole bunch of muscle in there, but we're not really covering that because it's not as significant for appearance. Okay. The basic shape I want you to think about for Latissimus is sort of a wings, like kind of a very, very simple bird or a big triangle. So this shape has a sort of inset little triangular shape in it because that is supposed to connect to the left and right. I'm always forgetting the stupid names of everything. The left and right, what are they called? crests, iliac crests. There we go. It's supposed to attach to the left and right iliac crests. So this diamond shape would be the internal shape on the bottom, and then you could just sort of imagine an angle going up to the top. Looking at anatomy charts, I don't really see that happening, and so I'm just simplifying it to this big triangular shape. It's close enough for our purposes. Just think of it as starting very small down in this triangle and then sweeping upward towards the arms, but ultimately it's probably going to wrap around the rib cage, sort of sweep out and then go straight up. So sweep out and go straight up. This one is a very visible muscle though, so it's very unlikely that you're going to not see it as long as you have a view of the side of the body. Okay, it is responsible for a lot of the profile of the torso, especially when you have your arms raised. Okay. Any questions about that?
So for our assignment, we need to draw the Loomis head and the chest area, well, the back area.
Yep. All of this plus these three muscles.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Okay, so the green area, we need to add it too?
Yes. The green area is the rhomboid muscles. They're attached between the two scapula and to the spine slightly higher up. They affect the contour of the body, as we'll see when we look in photographs.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the scapula, would that be considered kind of like the shoulder blades?
Yeah, the shoulder blades are the scapula.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
I wanted to know that.
Yeah. Shoulder blade is just the colloquial name for them, but they are triangular shaped, even though you don't see that from a photograph or a human being. Like, here's a bunch of people. I was just looking up reference earlier. You're probably thinking of shoulder blade as this raised area, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that raised area is the inner edge of the scapula. So that is this green line right here.
Okay.
Make sense? This guy actually has more developed muscles inside the scapula. That's this group right here that we're not covering, which is a pretty unusual one to actually see that developed, but he has them. So on both sides, what I want you guys to expect is to see a bulge raised area in these two areas, and then a sort of ridge running in a direction towards the connection point of the shoulder blade, which is where we're going to expect that triangular shape to occur. So if he's got his arm raised and this area is raised, you can expect that line to be running this way, and if he has it down, then you can expect it to go straight across, or actually a little bit angled, but almost straight across. Okay?
Okay.
Cool. All right, any other questions about these before we take a look at some photographs to identify these muscle positions?
Can you just do me a favor?
Sure.
Just take the muscles off so I see how it's gonna look from behind.
Like this?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And these are just our basic masses that we've been doing the whole time. A block for the pelvis, a egg that is about twice as tall as the pelvis and the same width, and a Loomis head, which is about half the size of the torso egg.
So it's okay if we do the egg, or we do it like the
well, this egg is cut off, so I start with an egg and figure out where's the front or the back of it, depending on which side we're looking. At this point, we're looking at the back, right? But about halfway through this, that is where the ribs are going to start to deviate. They're going to start to move away from the sides. So what I've done is draw through, down in both directions, and then figured out how would this wrap around, right, to sort of give me the back side of the ribs. So kind of just going through like this, right, and it slightly angles upward in the back, but that means that what we're getting is something like this, and I'm drawing through, so it's a little hard to tell, but I'll just erase parts of this. So we end up with something like this, with these being inside that we actually can't see, and then a little bit of a flat bit cut off at the top as we discussed last time. Okay, so this would be the center of the ribs in the back. We have a sort of flat space. Maybe you can see into it, maybe you can't. And these are this is the arc, the thoracic arc. The sternum, the suprasternal notch would be right here where it hits that plane, but we're looking through the object now.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So an egg is fine as long as you realize that we got to chop off a bunch of the egg. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. All right, you guys, let's take a look at some pictures then. I'm going to just drag them right in here, I think. A lot of these are from the Proco thing because he had very good model poses for these. I'm just going to put them at the top, I think. Let's drop them right up here. And we'll take a look and we'll identify exactly where these muscles are occurring.
That first one seemed strange. His waist was so small.
Oh, yeah.
So big.
Yeah, and it's because he's a bodybuilder. So bodybuilders are not just becoming strong, they're also doing extreme things with their morphology, which is, if you've ever seen a bodybuilding competition, one of the reasons why they look so strange is because they're not just being muscly developed in terms of like sports or something. If you look at athletes' bodies, their bodies make a lot of sense because they're doing it for a purpose. But a bodybuilder is just trying to do something extreme, more extreme than other bodybuilders can do. And that's what the competition is. Okay? So in this guy, in fact, let me turn it up a little bit more. Let's find those 3 muscle groups. And I think it was green for rhomboid, bluish purple for Latissimus dorsi, and then pink for trapezius. Okay? So let's start with the trapezius, because I think it's one of the easier ones to find. Do you guys see there's a bunch of bulges all over his back where we can find that dagger shape? Are you guys able to see it? Think so?
I see kind of the in-between of the... I wish I could show. Like between the shoulder blades, that like bump that's coming up.
We're talking about this?
And then it kind of comes down.
Comes down. So we're talking about this now?
No, it comes down from the bottom points.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're seeing here, that's the erector muscle. Okay, so the erector muscle, the one that we didn't cover, is here and then bulging outward here and here. So that's what it's going to, whoops, and I drew from the wrong spot. There we go, here. So we've got large shapes and then smaller shapes going down to the sagittal crest, or the sagittal triangle. So that's the one that we didn't identify. Okay, everything else is something that we have identified, I think. Yeah, pretty much, because we can't see the ones that wrap around the sides yet. Okay, so those 2 lines are correct. So what that means is that this goes either underneath or over, and I don't actually know which it is, those muscles creating the erector muscle. So this is the blade of that dagger. Okay, can you guys see where the sides of the dagger start to move? This one goes right over here, and this one goes right over here. Okay, so this bump, right, which you're going to see a lot in people, that is the place where the scapulas end. Okay, and you can see that the connection point for the shoulders is just underneath that. Okay, that's the place where the scapulas end. So it's also the place where the deltoids kind of dive down underneath, and that's where they begin. That's these muscles out here in the shoulder, which we'll cover in a little bit. And it's where the trapezius ends, the hilt of the dagger. Okay, makes sense? Hopefully?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we've got, he is turning his head to the left. If you could see this up here, if I continue his head up, it's probably about this big or so, or actually maybe smaller, because he is a very, very strong guy. So he might have very, very big muscles that make it seem like his head is too small. We can see the trapezius comes up this way, and then it's going to anchor itself into the base of the skull right up here. And so that means over on this side, this is the other half of the trapezius. So notice that there's a pretty big difference in shape here. This one is what we call activated. Activated meaning he's flexing it. If you flex something, and we haven't really covered basic muscle, function, but if you have a muscle, it is a collection of sort of fibrous ropes, we'll say, like this, that's attached to 2 or more different points. And if you put an electrical current through it, and that comes from our nerves, then it tenses up, which means that the length of the total muscle will shorten, and it will also bulge. Okay, so if that's a relaxed muscle right there, let's do with green, then this would be the activated version of that. And depending on how much you've exercised, it can get bigger or not very big in comparison to its original shape. Okay, so what we're seeing right here in this green little dot is that that side is activated. So because he's turning his head a little bit, and I guess that's the only thing he's doing, he may just be tensing everything because his shoulder sure isn't raising, that side is activated. Okay? So typically you would expect this, if you raised up this shoulder, that would activate that side and it would create a bulge. Okay? Does that all make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Just keep in mind this, by the way, and I was planning on covering this more when we were doing limbs because it's a lot more obvious with limbs. If you want the limb to move in this direction, I need to use pink. In this direction, you need a muscle on this side that can shorten, because muscles can only contract to do things. They lengthen when they're relaxed, they're not really doing anything. So a muscle does not push away from itself, it always pulls towards itself. So any part of the body that you want to move, let's say we want this guy to flex this direction so that his whole spine bends over this way, he's got to use muscles on this side of the body somehow to tighten up to make that happen. Okay? So every time you see an activated muscle, what you can expect is that they are trying to move in that direction. This is most obvious with the bicep and tricep of the arm. In fact, I got a guy doing it right here. The bicep is on the inner angle of the arm. It's the one responsible for closing the angle of the arm. The tricep is this one. It's on the back of the arm. It's responsible for opening the angle of the arm. So those are the most obvious ones. But every muscle does that. Okay? Can you guys see the triangle in the center of the dagger? And the 7th cervical vertebrae. Take a little look. Yeah? Definitely see right here, which means, although I can't see as well on this side, this and this, that's sort of where, or I said triangle, diamond, the diamond in the center here, and this notch is the 7th cervical vertebrae. Okay, right there. Cool. So we did it. We found it. Congratulations. Was that okay? Were you guys able to follow along and see where I was looking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turn it all off. Take a look. No? What's up, Kayla?
Yeah, I understand the muscles.
Mm-hmm. So what's confusing?
Also, when I first looked at the photos, I was kind of a little lost on the muscles.
Well, yeah, when you first look at them, but now you're going to have a knowledge of where to expect to see them, and that will help you predict. So one of the tricks here is that everything is always under a layer of skin, so you're not going to just see an outline of something all the time. You're going to see hints. So in the case of this guy, he's got not like oily skin or anything, but a little bit shiny, and so it's giving us an indication that there's a highlight, and that's a shape. There's a shadow, and that's a shape. There's a shadow, there's a highlight, there's a shadow. So in a live lit model, that's going to be your hint for where the muscle shapes are, is this pattern of light and dark. Okay? Whatever side the light is coming from, whenever you see a highlight, that means the surface is raising away from the person. So let's just really quick, give me one more layer. If we're looking here, right, at this area, and let's just focus just on that area, his back is kind of coming along like this, and then we hit this highlight, and that means that suddenly the shape rose up from the direction it was going. Then we see a slight shadow, which means that it's coming back down a little bit. Then we see a slight highlight, which means it's going back up a little bit. Then we see a large shadow, right? That means it's going back down again. So if you could run your finger across this guy's back, this is what would happen, right? Up, down, like that. And I could exaggerate it here, even though the perspective is not going to make much sense. Kind of like this, right? And then we can see right here, there's this other, whoop, it's coming up again. Over here, we've got this little bump, and then sort of a valley over here, but this looks like maybe a little divot right there. Does that make sense? Kind of help a little bit to visualize that way?
Yeah.
So you can do this for practice, is kind of draw these grid lines over top of a photograph, or even just over your own drawings, to kind of get an idea of what is the contour of this person? How is it affecting the surface so that we can see what the light is doing? See that?
Yeah.
Cool?
When I see that, it always reminds me of when we did the 3D modeling,
Uh-huh.
how the surface works.
Yeah, and this is very much like sculpting or 3D modeling. If you were to sculpt this, you'd probably start with a smooth base and then start adding masses, up in like this direction, and then flattening them down and making them pinch in certain areas and all of that good stuff. It's the exact same sort of intuitive process, even though the mechanical process is very different. Cool? All right, let's take a look at another muscle group then on this guy. So that's the trapezius. Where is the latissimus dorsi?
The latissimus was the wings?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would think that they were that area that's bulging out.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's this. It's no more complicated than that. There they are. And in fact, we've got a little hint right here at the bottom. See this little light spot right there? That's showing that the latissimus is going this way, and this is a different muscle group, right there. Okay? So that's the indication. So we've got this big bulging area, and it sort of starts to tuck at this point because it's hitting other things. But that's it right there. And it's coming down right in this direction. See this bit of shadow right here? That's the ending point of the latissimus dorsi. It's still going this way, and it's tucking right down there.
Okay, so it's like where the dimples usually are in the back?
Yes. It is part of what creates those dimples. So one thing that creates those dimples is the Erector Spinae here and here, and the fact that the Erector Spinae has multiple parts. In fact, that's what's going on over in this left side. That's the Erector Spinae muscle that they're indicating there. And so those hot dog shapes, right, they create this, and the latissimus dorsi is coming down this way. Right here, we're starting to encounter gluteal muscles and the bone. And so there's this sort of shaded in area here that's kind of like empty of things, and that's the creation of that dimple. But the sagittal crest, it really does come all the way down to kind of meet the sagittal crest and sort of form that triangle down there.
Okay, that helps. So that it's kind of where that meeting of the triangle and the lats that make that, and all the muscles together, but it kind of helps signify where they are because of those dimples.
Yes, if you can see those, then yes. The lower back portion is not always super visible. On this guy it is. The lower shapes, these shapes over here, are mostly created by gluteal muscles and bone, mostly bone right here at the top. Okay, this is a different muscle entirely, which we're going to cover in a later point, but that sort of diagonal line, that's created by the latissimus dorsi. But generally, everything on the upper half of the silhouette of the torso, that's going to be latissimus dorsi usually, unless I mean, even if they've got really well-developed pecs, they're never going to be bigger than the latissimus dorsi. So even from the front, you'll see latissimus poking out around the sides. Okay? Cool. And then the ending point of latissimus dorsi is on the actual humerus. Remember that this up here signifies this kind of connection point of the humerus bone. So the humerus is attaching way up here and heading down that way, which means that this is heading right to the right spot to kind of be connecting to that bone right now. And same thing over here. Joint is somewhere about there, heading down this way. It's heading at about the right spot right now. What about the top of the latissimus? Can you guys see the top of it? To be honest, I don't think I can. I'm looking real hard for it. I don't think so. What I see is this egg shape here, which is something else. I see this triangle dimple area and this one. Some sort of flat semi-egg shape, and I have no idea what that one is. But I don't see a line that dips down through the back like this. This is what we would expect it to do, but I do not see that. Okay? So
Tucked under the muscles, maybe?
I actually think the latissimus is one of the surface ones, I believe. But what is the latissimus doing? Think of it that way. Why do we have these big bulging muscles?
Is it hidden underneath all those extensions of muscles on his back?
I don't think so. I think it's one of the more surface ones. But I do feel like this right here is an indication of the top of the latissimus, this little bit. But then we just kind of lose it. It's just gone after that. But
Maybe because it's caping over those muscles and he's flexing them, it's just harder to see that muscle because he trained more of the other muscles.
Well,
Kind of come out more?
well, stay with me. Think about what is the muscle doing. It's connecting all the way down here, and then it's going this way, and it's going this way. What is the muscle for?
Twisting and pulling of the arms?
Pulling them which direction?
Upward?
No. Because if it were upward, it would be on top.
Okay.
So it's downward, right? Remember, a muscle will always pull in the direction it's already situated. So this being here, right, means it's going to pull things towards it. If it shortens, then it's going to compress this area. So that means it's meant to crunch this side down or move this arm bone towards the body. Really, it's a part of both. It helps to crunch the body to the side. It helps to move the shoulder area downward. It helps to flex backward, right? So if you were suspending yourself from two chairs, the reason I bring that up is because why would we see it going this way? That would be for pinching together. That's not what this is for. This muscle doesn't do that. It doesn't help us do that. It helps us move downward. So we expect to see the mass this way, and we do. But we wouldn't expect to see it this way, even if there are some fibers there. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So really, where we should expect to see any bulging would be here, and we definitely do, right? But we wouldn't expect to see them so much, even in the center, really, and this is a different muscle group, but we definitely wouldn't expect it up here, because that would suggest that what it's for is drawing our two shoulder joints together, which is not what this particular muscle is for. Okay? So just know that it attaches center spine a little bit into the dagger, somewhere around here, but it's very unlikely that you're going to see it. Okay, but check this out. Like, as I draw those, I did pass this little kind of shadow, and I did pass this little kind of shadow. Actually, I'm not even sure if that's the right one, because there's this one. It's possible it's that one, because this does have to flip inside of the humerus, so it could be that and that, but I'm not entirely sure. But just expect that there may be some line in that area if you see. If you don't you don't need to draw any shadow or highlight there. For your homework this week, of course, indicate it as best you can, but when we're drawing a full figure in lit environments, maybe there's nothing there to indicate, right? That makes sense to you guys? Hopefully?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So then let's do the last muscle group, which is meant to pull the two scapula together, the rhomboid. See if you can find it.
So there's two little triangles right below the blade, and I'm assuming it's those.
This?
Or in that area.
Well, that's not what the muscle looks like.
Well, I from the other I feel like it's under that, obviously.
Yes.
But that's kind of like locating where it's at in that area, because it's supposed to connect the shoulder blades.
Correct.
To your knee.
You're basically right. Yeah, I'm messing with you a little bit, but you're basically right. That this and this, those are, I believe, where the scapula are right now, because this blade does not attach to it on its side. It only attaches on the top, right? So that would place one scapula about there and the other scapula about here, okay? Which means that that's the lower connection point of our rhomboid muscles. Okay? Then the sides are just the same as what we think about as those shoulder blades right there and there. And then we just need to connect into the spine going upward. So now, does this start to make sense why the center of that trapezius muscle, why the blade part is bulging so much? You see, if we travel towards the spine this way, now we're overlapping quite a bit. And if we go up here, I think it connects to 7th cervical. Actually, I'm not sure about that. Got to look at my own notes to see. One moment. I want to make sure. Oh, it actually does. Yeah, it goes all the way up to 7th cervical, so that's easier to remember then. Okay, so it goes all the way up here. But now, look at what's happening on the surface beneath it. There's a big bulge right here, isn't there? Right? And on this other side, there's a big bulge. And it's created by two different muscle groups overlapping, so we get this kind of effect. Okay? And I know that that's a little bit more complicated looking than the simple rhomboid shape, but wherever you get this overlapping, we're going to start to get this compound effect that things are bulging out and away from the body a little bit. So right here also. And then if I start turning that off, you can see this kind of lessens as we get out of that area. Okay, there's a little bit less bulge down here into these big hot dog shapes that represent the erector muscles. Okay. So to reiterate, this is the shape we're looking for, but it's going to cause the surface contour to raise, which is going to be a squishy, rounded kind of effect. Okay? Any questions? No questions at all. Are you absolutely sure? Positively. Is it because, oh Jesus Christ, what did I get myself into? Or is it because, yes, I understand completely and I'm at total peace?
I feel like I'm in total peace with this next.
Okay.
Not gonna lie.
Okay, good.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does all muscles be in the homework assignment?
The homework assignment, you can look up in the modules. It's only got 3 pieces to it. And it's the 3 that we're looking at.
Oh, okay.
Okay, these 3 muscles. Alright, let's look at this guy, because we've got 2 different views, and he's actually squeezing his scapula together, which creates a different kind of surface effect. Okay, so let's start with the rhomboid this time. Where's the rhomboid muscle on this guy's back over here? Can you guys find it? What should you start with really? Am I starting you off on the wrong foot saying immediately find the rhomboid muscle?
I can see the scapula muscle, the scapula bone.
Bone,
kind
yeah.
of open out, and because of going in so much, it's hard to see that little the under muscles. I could see the over muscles quite a lot.
The over muscles. All of the ones that we are identifying are over muscles. So those are all going to be ones we are actually looking for. But I think what you're saying is there's so much pinch there, things are starting to kind of get obscured. But we can see the scapula, right? There's one line of the scapula. There's the other line of the scapula. In fact, I think I misdrew that just a little bit, probably right about here. And here's the 7th cervical vertebra. Those are the things that are going to really help us, right? And we've even got this big complicated bit over here. That's where the scapula is ending and the clavicle is beginning. This notch right here is where the clavicle is ending and the scapula is beginning. Okay, so we can even see here is the scapula, or sorry, the clavicle coming in right like that. That's the suprasternal notch over on this side. This knot, that's right where that that intersection is happening. So we may be able to infer what's going on back here and find out where that scapula is going. Maybe. Okay. Do you guys figure out where the rhomboid muscle is then? I basically just made a road map. No? Talk to me, guys.
Rhomboid is the dagger, right?
No.
It's the other one?
Rhomboid's the one between the blades. You guys know what a rhombus is, right? Rhombus. It's the one that's like this. It's like.
The one I originally thought it was.
So remember, it connects from the two blades of the scapula is one part of it. The center is another, but it goes to the 7th cervical vertebra, and it goes just kind of in the same direction on the bottom. So this should be it right here. Okay. You see that? Look at that. As soon as I take that away, boom, there's a shape there. Now, it's a compound shape. It's made up with the trapezius as well, but it's right in there.
I can see kind of like where the muscles are kind of wrinkling together.
Yes, wrinkling. Yes. So if we were to draw it in a more complicated way, right, we see this and this and this sort of thing and a sort of thing there and this guy and this one here. But you see why we're simplifying it all? Because this is really, really complicated, and it's not that helpful if we're trying to make this a system that we can remember. But those are all the little pinches and contours that we can see in that area. In fact, there's one, like a lesser one here, right? And there's sort of one there. And of course there's this one. So that's what you guys are looking at, right? This is kind of noise, this pattern here. And we want to cut through that noise and find out where are the structures we really care about, the ones that we need to see in order to draw the person reasonably. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. So there's the rhomboid. Since we're at the top, let's do trapezius, because that's the one that is the dagger shape right up here at the top. Can you guys see where the trapezius is?
Right behind the neck.
Right behind the neck is this shape. So what is this shape?
The diamond in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm. Right? And it's always going to be centered on the 7th cervical vertebra. So if you can see that, so here is, and this time it's kind of bulging, right, because we are squeezing together. But up here at the top, we've got these two very slight changes. And then sometimes you'll even see a cleft going up towards the occipital lobe of the skull, which is the back part of the skull. Okay, sometimes. Okay, then we've obviously got the outer contour of the shoulder here. But what about on the right-hand side? Which one of those is trapezius?
It looks like it's going kind of around in that little wrinkle that's there above the, following the yellow line.
Following the yellow line. Oh, over on this guy?
On the right side.
On the right side. So what yellow line? This yellow line?
For the shoulder blade.
Yeah?
Scapula. It looks
Oh,
like it kind of creases in a little bit and goes up towards that way.
Kinda-
Going towards-
Oh, like this? Like what I just drew here? That's probably basically correct. I mean, we simplify it just a little bit typically into just like this. But yeah, you're basically correct with that. That's the hilt of the dagger. I'm interested in which one of these, 1, 2, or 3, do we think is the trapezius?
I think 2.
So we got 1, 2, or 3. And can we explain them all?
2
2?
would be 2.
Any other guesses?
2.
2? Everybody gonna say 2?
2.
Okay. I'll tell you what. I have no idea what number 3 is. I don't know. And you know what? There's actually a fourth one. It's this one right here. In defiance of any kind of perspective, I think that's his collarbone. Is this fourth one right here?
I think it might be his pecs, because when you look in the front, they're so out there.
It cannot be. I mean, it's got to be his collarbone first, right? Because the pecs attach to the collarbone and they stick out. If it were his pecs, then holy crap. That's amazing. But, you know, who knows? Because they are very, very well developed, right? I don't know what this one is. Like, I think it's probably just a minor head of the same muscle, because this happens a lot. You won't have just a single structure for a muscle. It will sometimes be ripply, okay? So take a look over at the guy's pec, right? Right here, take a look. Do you guys see all those lines and things?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all pec muscle. But there are like 3 major ones and then a bunch of minor ones. So what's happening is that we're getting all sorts of little ripples in this area because we're right at a connection point and it's bulging, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a different muscle. The same way that we've got skin wrinkles way over here in his armpit, and that doesn't mean that there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different structures there. It's just the skin wrinkling. So here, it's a little misleading, but I think this whole thing is his trapezius going up here, because notably I can see a hollow right there where it would kind of be going in the correct direction. This one is definitely mastoid, right? Going right from the earlobe down, okay? But this one right here, that's going to be trapezius. And it's connecting, by the way, right up here with one side and the opposite side. So everything kind of checks out for that. All right?
Will the trapezius connect with the back of the ear also?
No.
Okay.
No, it connects to the back of the skull. So if I, here I got the rotation right over here on my other screen. See, it's way back there.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. But one bad thing about these rotations, all these muscles look very flat in these rotations. So keep in mind they're a lot more bulgy than that, even in a normal person. All right, so we've got, and we can kind of guess that the other part of the trapezius is over there somewhere. What about the blade? The blade of the trapezius.
Well, it would just connect to the notch. And you can see the line wrinkling at the bottom.
This notch right here?
No, the shoulder notch.
Shoulder notch. I'm talking about the blade, so the bottom part, right? Like somewhere down here. So if it's a dagger, this is the handle, this is the crossguard, and down here somewhere is the blade.
Oh, I was thinking of the other part.
So our basic shape is this, right? Kind of like that. Acorn or a blade, either way you want to think about it. With a big triangular, or sorry, I keep saying triangle, big diamond cut out in the middle, like that. So I'm looking for the bottom part, the blade part. We haven't said where that is. What do you guys think? You guys think you can see it? The shadowed area?
Yeah.
So if you look at the charts and the turnarounds, the blade is supposed to go a lot lower than this. But right now we've got an extreme pinch happening. So here's the bottom of the scapula, right? And then it's supposed to go way down there. But remember what this thing is supposed to do, right? This is for pinching the shoulder blades together and also to a degree raising the shoulder blades up. We've got a lot more to develop on the top and in the center. So here we're going to expect a lot of development. Here we always see a lot of development, right? But down here we don't really see as much development. So yeah, that's about right that this will depart, and if you can just see kind of a shadowy area like that and it sort of tucks in there, we'll assume that it just goes and hits the skeleton somewhere back there. But you can just see this sort of hazy shape right there, and that's kind of creating the blade, which looks really crazy because this is being squished extremely. Okay? And creating this bulge in the middle. Cool? Hopefully?
Yeah.
Alright, then last one, latissimus. Can we see the latissimus? This one's pretty hard in this angle because we're not seeing enough of the body.
I think it's just that little blade right there in the
This? Well, that's nothing like the shape of latissimus though, right? Is that it? Do we think that's it?
No.
No.
Under the arm, there's a little, there's a light spot. Not the one there, yeah.
Right here. That is probably it, yeah. It's probably this heading down, because it's the only one that makes sense. This one, I don't want to say that that's serratus, because that wouldn't make any sense, but it's not in the direction that latissimus goes. So I'm tempted to say at least that it's something else. But I don't think that's it. I do think it's this other one that's heading down. On the opposite side, we can kind of see it just barely, that there's two lines, one here, and it's the inner line heading down this way. So this one is pretty tough on this setup because of the way that we're seeing this angle. I believe that the latissimus would go right underneath that and connect, because that just about checks out. It's possible that it's like traversing through this bumpy, ridgy area, but it would only be like maximum this kind of area right down here, partially. I don't think it's that other muscle. There's another group underneath the armpit that we expect, the serratus, which is something in this kind of area, but this one is kind of interesting because it's popping up and away. I don't really know what his arm is doing though, and that might change the way that we think about this. It is totally possible that this here is the direction that the latissimus is going, and this just happens to be a kind of fold in his skin, but I can't say for certain. Okay? So in a situation like this, do your best guess. If that's your guess, fine. If this is your guess, fine. You know, try to figure it out though. And if you have to, have anatomy charts available for yourself. Just look them up and see if there's another muscle in that area that could be explaining that bump. Okay, because very likely that there is. All right? How was that? You guys good? You want to try at least the trapezius on this guy on the left?
Yeah.
Trapezius, where's the trapezius in this guy on the left? It's right where the blue lines are.
The shoulders.
Here? No.
Yeah.
No.
The blue line.
Hey, it's the blue lines. Yeah. It's this. You guys make me a little sad by not knowing that, because it's literally one of the examples he shows in the videos. Complete by drawing over this exact same photograph, so I think I'm just convinced that nobody's watched the videos yet, so yeah. I'm gonna go drink myself into a stupor now. I'm kidding. Are you guys getting overwhelmed by this?
A little.
A little bit?
The only thing that I'm trying to keep track of is the names of the things. So
Okay.
I'm like, wait a minute, which muscle was that one?
Okay. I might be able to help a little bit with that if we take a look back at these shapes down here. Trapezius sounds like trapeze, right? The one that you would reach up with is trapezius. So that is these two, right, left and right, in this big dagger shape, because in order to reach up, they're the ones you would have to activate. You would have to bulge these out like that in order to be reaching way, way up in the air and swing on the trapeze. Does that help at all?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Then latissimus is lateral. Lateral meaning side to side. Okay. So latissimus, these two, the blue ones, these big wings, the wings are going side to side. They are lateral. Latissimus. Does that help at all?
Yeah.
Okay. And how about this? You guys know about dolphins? Dolphins, and they have a little fin on the back of their body. Do you guys know what the fin is called?
A dorsal fin?
A dorsal fin. So we've got Latissimus dorsi because it's on the back of the guy. A dorsal fin is on the back of a dolphin. So if you had the other two fins, these two fins, on the bottom of the dolphin, do you know what those are called? Side fins. No, but that was a good guess. We could call them lateral fins. No, they are actually pectoral fins. Pectoral fins as in our pecs, the muscles that we have on the front. Those are the pectoral fins. Does any of that help?
Yes.
Okay. Those are all of the ways that you can kind of make sense of these words, because we're frequently going to have these Latin root words that are going to refer to something. But I'll tell you what, later on when we're doing the legs, there's a name for the calf muscle, which is the craziest name I've seen in the entire body, and I can't make any sense of why we call it that. Anybody remember from the list? I gave you guys the list a few weeks ago to look at. I'm not sure if anybody saw it, but every time I see it I go, wow, why are we doing this to ourselves?
Could you send it through the list? I don't have it.
It's in one of the first modules. Just go back through the modules and look.
Okay.
So you're meant to use those modules long term. They never cut off access. You should be able to access them still. And they have lots of good information in them. So the name of the calf muscle is gastrocnemius.
What?
That doesn't seem right.
Nope, it doesn't seem right. Gastrocnemius. Gastrocnemius, I think, something like that. This means stomach. And apparently the reason that they named it that is because they thought it looked like a stomach. And I'm not seeing it. But it's one of the craziest named muscles. I'll tell you this much. Artists do not call it gastrocnemius. Artists call it calf. You know? Because why wouldn't you? The reason we need to learn these names is because they're not always 100% understandable just from saying the colloquial name. Shoulder blades is understandable. We're referring to the bone, right? Shoulder muscle is not, though. We've got the trapezius, we've got the deltoids, which are right around this area over here, and to a greater or lesser degree, we've got the other muscles that are kind of nestling themselves underneath and between the scapula. Which one do you mean? Well, in that case, we should probably know at least a few of the major words for these muscles. Okay? And the ones that we're going over are some of the most essential. Probably you're not going to use rhombus very much, but it's good to identify just because we have to see the surface effect. But latissimus and trapezius, those are definitely ones people will use the name of. Okay?
So on the scapulas, do we only have skin then?
No, there's muscle in there. We're just not covering it. It's basically filled with muscle. That this whole thing, if you look at a skeleton, is sort of dished out. There's sort of a cup in there, and there's muscle going absolutely all through that. And in fact, on that really well-developed muscular guy, we can kind of see that. Yeah. So all of this stuff in here, and I'm not entirely sure what that one is, but something else. Yeah, all of these different areas, probably this one right over here is some sort of muscular development inside the scapula as well.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to this guy. There we go. So, where's the trapezius? The red one? On this left guy?
Following the blue line.
It's literally just following the blue lines. Yes, it is. Right? So, this and this and these big bulges, right? Those are just parts of the trapezius.
And that's just like kind of a part of the hilt of the blade.
Yep, that's right. And going up towards the handle. The handle would be going up this way, sort of, behind his skull. And then it disappears and we can't see it anymore. Okay. As far as the rest of it down there, I don't know. We're at too weird of an angle. I can't, effectively predict. Probably there's something about this angle that I should know, but I'm not entirely sure what that angle is right here. But probably something that I should be able to figure out. Right now, I don't really know what that is. Okay? Alright, let's see. What else do we have? We actually have one of his drawings, which I thought was a good example because it's from a side view, and it's got a lot of these muscle groups visible. So I think it makes a good example. Let's turn that down a bit. Okay. Can you guys see the 3 different muscle groups in his own illustration? They should be on display because he's actually drawing them right here now.
Yes, you could see the latissimus coming down on the side of the body.
Right here. Yep. Right, and we can see this.
Of the spine.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that triangle kind of pointing down. Mm-hmm. And you can see where the scapula and the shoulder blade would be.
Mm-hmm. And this is also trapezius right here. The trapezius is going to disappear behind this. This is the deltoid muscle, so it's obscuring what's going behind there. But it means that the sort of hilt is somewhere back here. We just can't see it. Okay? And the other hilt is disappearing around perspective over on this side. We can see this. It attaches to a skull, which is somewhere up here, which we can't see at the moment. But yeah, this is trapezius right here in the middle. We can also sort of see the rhomboid a little bit. I think it is this part, because we've got this little cleft here. And that would mean this is the other half of the rhomboid, probably creating this raised section, which would be mirrored on this side if we could see it. But I'm going to guess that's going to be the rhomboid area right there. Okay. So, and then down here, this is the hot dog shaped things that we didn't cover yet, the Erector Spinae. Okay. Cool. So see how he's using all of that knowledge in this illustration, and it is a really, really muscular illustration. You're not always going to have very muscular people like this, but it's nice to be able to see him putting that stuff into action. Let's see, what else we got? Here we go. We've got 2 people, and 1 male, 1 female, and they're not super muscularly developed, which is good, because that means it's going to be harder to identify all of these different pieces. Okay, so let's start with the guy, because he's probably going to be a little bit easier, because there's a lot of more bulgy stuff happening. Can we find the latissimus? This one should be the easiest one, because it's the wide one.
You can see it coming down on the side of his body. It's causing that upward shape, the hourglass kind of.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it does. If you were to say, like, cartoon a muscular guy, and this is the waist, right? Let's give him like a little Speedo or something like that. Here's his navel. This shape, that's the latissimus shape that you would make if you were kind of like making this cartoony muscle guy, right? And then you give him his little tiny head and big ears, like that. I'm making a cartoony muscle guy because it's funny. Oh, we want to have, right, the thoracic ridge there, because that's an important part of that, of getting this kind of cartoon figure. So yeah, these 2 coming down, those are the latissimus, and they create the dimples right here and here, part of the sagittal triangle. Boom, boom. Then the top of it, we don't really see, but it's somewhere here. Okay? And remember, this is going all the way up and then attaching to the humerus somewhere way up there. Okay. How about the rhomboid? We can actually kind of see it on this guy. Rhomboid? Or where's the scapula? How about that? Where's the scapula?
There looks to be like a little groove where it's kind of poking out. Yeah, there.
Which one?
The up one.
The up one, yeah. Yeah, it better be the up one, yeah. Yeah, so it's going in this direction. We've got to kind of pinch in between. But this would place this way too high, right? If we've got the latissimus way down there, actually the latissimus and the rhombus don't necessarily interact very much. But we can see this bulging shape here, right? Which is going to be something. It might be the rhombus muscle highly developed, but then the question is, where is the trapezius? I don't see the back of the trapezius at all. Do you guys? Let me get that out of there. Shouldn't it be here?
I thought you said that was the one on the shoulder.
Yeah, the trapezius goes along the top of the scapula and down through the center.
It looks like it's higher.
Trapezius is this one right here. See? Yeah, it does look like that. So something's going on.
The line where the scapula is, it looks like it's much higher.
It does. So we can see that where this guy's shoulders end, right? We can imagine continuing these shoulders on and creating a kind of neck here somewhere. That we know trapezius is going to be here, and it's going to ride along the tops of the scapula somewhere, and then come down and end with the tip of the dagger down inside of the latissimus, something like this. But can we see surface details that support any of that?
No.
No? You sure about that? That doesn't look good? Yeah. Here's the confusing thing about this guy. He is suppressing his shoulders. He's pushing his shoulders downward right now, which means that the triangle shape that we expect to be kind of like this, right? Right now it's angled downward. It's doing that. And same thing on this side. It's kind of doing that a little bit. Actually, I'm drawing it way too exaggerated, but there we go. We've got this notch, I think, somewhere right around here for the connection point of the scapula. And then on this side, it can't be going down this far, but it could be going this far. Something like that, maybe. But he's suppressing his shoulders, and I can kind of see that happening. He may be rotating them backward as well, which is creating kind of a confusing look, but it's going to be somewhere in that region. Definitely not this one. It doesn't point towards armpit. Okay? It's got to point towards this notch that we would find up on the top, which has got to be somewhere around there. So I'm going to guess that what we're seeing is sort of like this, some sort of perspective thing happening, but that doesn't quite look right. So I'm not entirely sure there. It's interesting though, huh?
Would he be activating them? And that's why they're shortening?
Activating the trapezius?
Yeah, the trapezius.
So if he was, then his shoulders would be way up. He would be shrugging. Right? And that would drag the scapula out and up like this. But we can see that he's not shrugging his shoulders. He's actually pushing them down. So part of the reason we can't see it is probably because if you're pushing them down like that, you're not going to see any bulging up in this upper area. You're only going to see it in the middle, like here, where the rhomboid muscles are. Okay? Other muscles are going to start bulging like these ones here, which I've not identified yet. I don't think they're part of the serratus, but I'm going to look it up. But they are actually activated. They are pulling right now.
Okay, so we see that little area with the little crease by the scapula because the rhombus is most likely, because the rhombus is there.
Yes.
And it flattens out so much that we can't see the bottom of it.
Correct.
And that seems like it's shorter than what it is.
Yeah, I think it's doing something like this. Like here would be the scapula in this region. The muscles inside the scapula are flexing, I believe. Over on this side, a similar thing is happening, but we can't really see any definition because he's not flexing those muscles. We can see the rhomboid muscle, nice and plain and easy, which is going to be something like this. But we can't see the dagger shape of the trapezius, partially because it's going off the screen, partially because he's not using it right now. But it's going to be something like that. What's interesting is on her, we can actually see it a lot better because she's raising her arms. Okay, so what we've got here, after we get out of the sagittal triangle and the two hot dog shapes, which are here and here, up on the top, right, we should be able to find Latissimus dorsi with her pretty easily. That would be right where the waist changes direction. Okay, so it creates this straight and then out angle on a guy. On a female caricature, right, there's this hourglass figure kind of thing. That's what's created by the latissimus on the female. Okay, so it's this stretching upward. Now this one, as we've said, that's probably serratus or something inside of the scapula. That's not quite the same thing. Right now the latissimus kind of dives behind that and we don't see it anymore. So it's going up that way. But it does mean that these are probably scapula here and here, and that would make sense because she's reaching so high up. She's reaching so high up that these have rotated outward extremely. Okay? This is also one of the reasons why the trapezius is not attached to the side planes of the scapula, because if it was, it would be stretched really thin and it would be very uncomfortable to do this reaching motion. In fact, the blade is just right here. The blade of that trapezius, just right there. Okay? It's going like this. And then somewhere up here, bulging here and here, and joining the neck, but we can't really see what's going on. Triangle is going to be something like this. So, in this kind of ballpark. Then again, can we see it, the latissimus wrapping around the back? Not especially, but it's going to be somewhere right here. It cuts off the bottom part of that dagger. Maybe we can see a little bit of shadow in there. It also kind of bulges down a little bit. But it definitely does travel down here and probably going to swing in to hit the sagittal triangle. Like that. Okay. Rhomboid muscle is a little bit interesting in here because now this area is stretched so thin that the rhomboid muscle has all but disappeared, and it's going to be something like this now, kind of a flat area. Actually, no, it should be much, much higher. That's right, it attaches to the 7th circle. It's very stretched out. Wow. That's a very, very malleable muscle. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, something in that region. I see it. Not especially.
I don't see it.
I think maybe right here. Right there. Right about to there, because that's probably the ending point of the scapula. And that's kind of the point. You won't always see it because it's underneath skin. The muscles aren't always developed. Depending on what's activated and what's not, you're not necessarily going to always see visible proof that the muscle is right there. But you know they're there somewhere. So look for the subtle indications. Something like in that region. Okay? How we doing, guys? You feel like you can do this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
How many, though, is the question?
The answer is 20. Same as last time.
Actually, no, I mean, not that bad.
No. You got a whole week to do it. Most of a whole week.
It's not that bad, actually.
Yep. 3 muscles. 2 of them are big and obvious. One of them you can piece together where it is just by the scapula alone. Shouldn't be too hard to find them. And then we'll add some more and we'll make it more and more complicated.
Did you want us to find like back muscle pictures on Google?
That's what I did, because using quick poses just didn't work for me. I tried it earlier. What I did in Google Images, just model back shoulders, or model shoulders, model upper back, whatever. You're going to find a lot of crazy developed, bodybuilder stuff, but you'll find some, more normal people as well. Try a combination of like people who have lesser muscle development and people who have more muscle development. Combination of male and female. You'll find a lot from like, stock image sites and bodybuilding websites and stuff. These are kind of cool, where you get kind of a difference in the flexion, because you can see the difference between him activating and not activating those muscle areas. He's got very obvious scapula, though. It's crazy. Yep. This guy's gone overtime on those muscles, overtime on the traps.
How would we move those photos to our drawing programs?
Just drag them in. You just save them on your desktop. I've got a few over on my desktop right now. You just drag them into Photoshop or Krita, just drop them in, hit enter. That's it.
I thought you just right click them and copy.
Oh, you're saying like how to save this image? So if it's just no, you can't just copy and paste from the internet. That won't work. You got to download it. Well, sometimes it will work, but most of the time it won't. If you want to save this, you can either, if it's just a JPEG or PNG image, drag it directly from here to your desktop, or right-click and do Save Image As, and that will allow you to place it somewhere on your computer. Okay? All right, you guys. Any other questions? That's basically it for today.
Are you going to record?
I already did. Yes, I did. It's all recorded.
Like your little cartoon drawing.
Thanks. Alright, you guys, any other questions?
No, I just wanted to let you know I sent you an email in regards to my grades.
Okay, well, why don't you hang out for a sec? We'll talk about it right after I stop.
Okay.
Alright, you guys, thank you. And that's going to be it for now.